Most people think you need film school to build a career in film, but you don't. And that assumption costs people years. So while those people are off paying tuition, someone else is building credits, relationships, and real leverage. Here's what almost no one tells you. The industry doesn't care where you studied. It cares what you've done. And in this video, I'm going to show you how careers are actually built without film school. So before we get into that, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss future breakdowns like this. So let's start with something practical. Film school is expensive. LA Film School is currently around $30,000 a year, and a traditional four-year program can land anywhere between $120,000 to close to $300,000 by the time you're done. Even trade schools, which are marketed as the affordable option, are still a major financial commitment. In some cases, that's the budget of your first feature. My business partner at Indie Film Ins and Outs and indie producer Mark Klebanoff. He and I went to one of the most prestigious film schools in the country. We'll be the first to say there were benefits. We were exposed to film history, genre theory, and a lot of great cinema. When it came to understanding how to actually structure a project so that it could be financed, positioned in the market, and sold, that education was limiting. Look back, Mark has said more than once that if he had to do it again, he would have gone straight onto working on sets. Education has value, but it's important to understand this clearly. It's not a requirement for building a career in film. Honestly, there's no way I could afford film school now. I could barely afford it many years ago. And to leave film school with a $30,000 degree or even a $120,000 degree, that's no guarantee of work. But what's great about this business is that you don't need to go to film school to be successful in this industry. The key to success is to insert yourself into the industry immediately. Production assistant, production office, independent sets, work in the industry. Here's the part most people don't think through. The path film school graduates take after they finish is the same path you can take without the degree. They still have to get on set, they still have to start at the bottom, they still have to prove themselves. Yes, some of them leave film school with a small network, and that can help, but real progression doesn't happen in a classroom. It happens on set. That's where you see how films actually get made. That's where you learn how departments function under pressure. That's where you build relationships that lead to the next job. So if you don't go to film school, you're not behind. You're simply entering the real process sooner. Now, you can't just decide you're a filmmaker and expect a career to materialize. A lot of people make that mistake. They love movies, they feel inspired, they declare it, but this industry doesn't respond to declarations. It responds to execution. It rewards the people who show up consistently, the ones who take responsibility, the ones who deliver under pressure. So if you're not in film school, you can't afford to be casual about it. You need structure somewhere else. And that structure comes from consistent set time, from being around the work, from understanding how decisions actually get made, from seeing what works and what fails in real time. That's where momentum begins. And you can absolutely teach yourself the basics like screenwriting. When Mark entered film school, he thought he just wanted to write. But by the time he got into film school, he was already writing screenplays. Not because a professor taught him. He read scripts from films he loved. He studied the difference between what was on the page and what made it to the screen. He read really bad scripts too, especially while interning in development. That's where he began to really understand structure and format. What works, what doesn't. Film school didn't make him a writer. Reading did, writing did. And the same principle applies to production. You can sit in a classroom and learn about lighting, lenses, and camera theory. That information is useful, but until you're working under real-time pressure, real budget constraints, and real consequences, you're still operating at a theoretical level. Mark uses this analogy often. You can study the rules of the road in driver's ed, but you're not driving until you're behind the wheel. A student film set is one thing, a real independent or studio production is another. That kind of exposure shifts your understanding. It forces you to see how decisions are actually made, not how they're supposed to be made in theory. You know, things are different these days, and in a good way. When Mark first came out of school, raising $10,000 to make a film wasn't even part of the conversation. Even $50,000 felt substantial. It required serious consideration, and getting equipment was expensive. Today, that barrier looks very different. You can make a film for $10,000, $5,000, sometimes even less. You can shoot with an iPhone at no cost. It may not be ideal, it may not be perfect, but it gives you production experience. And experience is what builds competence. We also live in a time where information is widely accessible. Even now, after years in the industry as a producer and sales agent, Mark still studies. Before a project, he'll revisit the fundamentals. He'll listen to someone like Roger Deakins, discuss cinematography, even when the principles are basic, because perspective from someone operating at that level is valuable. If there's a technical problem, you don't have to wait for formal instruction. You research it, you solve it. That's professional development now. Access to knowledge is no longer the barrier. Initiative and execution is. And years ago, the industry consisted of primarily bigger studio films and only in a few major cities. And now indie productions are everywhere, in every state, and you can join them to get experience. On large union productions, everyone stays in their lane. That structure is intentional. Roles are defined. Departments are protected. You're responsible for your scope and that's it. But independent films operate differently. This is why being a PA on an indie film can be such a strong starting point. Not because it's glamorous, but because it gives you visibility across departments. You're not confined to one narrow function. You get to see how the machine actually runs. And if you're respectful and you understand timing, most department heads are open to sharing knowledge. You don't interrupt when the pressure is high. You observe first. You ask when appropriate. Independent sets are especially valuable because people wear multiple hats. There's less insulation. When something goes wrong, it's solved in real time. You see how decisions are made without layers of protection. There's no safety net. And that kind of exposure, watching how problems are handled under pressure, is education, the kind that stays with you. Many people enter the industry convinced they want to direct. That's the default ambition. And we joke about this sometimes on an indie set. Everyone thinks they're a director. But once you're actually working, something shifts. You begin to see where you're naturally strong. Maybe it's cinematography, maybe it's production design, maybe it's editing, maybe it's the logistics and coordination. But you start to recognize where you add real value. And there's nothing wrong with that. Exposure reveals strengths. You can't determine your place in this industry from the outside. You can't think your way into it. You figure it out by being present, by doing the work, by seeing how you respond under pressure. That's where clarity comes from. When people decide they want to produce their own projects, it usually starts quietly. They're still working, still on set, still building, but in the background, they're developing something of their own. This is where your day job matters. If you're going to work, it's far more strategic to work inside the industry than outside of it. Sure, you could Uber or you could be on set. Being on set is harder. The hours are longer. The expectations are higher, but you're building relationships. You're earning trust. You're positioning yourself where real opportunity exists. We've seen this repeatedly. Someone works with a strong camera operator on a project, and then later that same person becomes attached to their film. That attachment adds credibility. It strengthens the package before financing even enters the conversation. The same advice applies to actors. If you can help it, don't wait tables. Be on set. Be a PA on an indie film. Crew members often end up in small roles. It's not guaranteed, but it happens a lot. And it only happens if you are present. This industry runs on proximity. Proximity creates opportunity. And eventually, most filmmakers want ownership. They don't just want to contribute to someone else's project. They want to produce their own. And this is where many careers stall, because producing isn't just a creative exercise, it's a structural one. It rests on a business foundation. What we've seen consistently is that filmmakers focus almost entirely on the film they want to make, the story, the tone, the vision. They don't pause to evaluate whether that project is investable. They don't think carefully about market positioning. They don't align the budget with realistic distribution outcomes. They don't reverse engineer profitability before spending money. And that's where the friction begins. Financing collapses because the package isn't structured properly. Distribution conversations never move forward because the film doesn't fit a clear lane. Most films are not unprofitable because they lack talent. They're unprofitable because they were not structured strategically from the beginning. And when filmmakers reach the stage where they're ready to produce their own content, they usually recognize something quickly. There's a gap. They understand creativity, they understand story, they understand tone and performance. What they don't fully understand is structure. They haven't been shown how to build a project so it can actually be financed, positioned in the market, and sold. And that's exactly why we created the Creative Producers Filmmaking Roadmap. It's not about replacing your creativity, it's about supporting it. We teach filmmakers how to build investable projects, how to align their creative vision with financial responsibilities and market positioning so the film has a legitimate path to financing and distribution. Because building a career isn't about making one film, it's about making films in a way that allows you to make the next and the next. So if that interests you, I dropped a link below where you can check it out. So film school can be valuable, absolutely. Education has its place, but it is not essential to becoming a filmmaker. If you have the discipline to insert yourself into the work, to consistently show up, build relationships, and learn how the business actually functions, you can build a career. You don't have to live in a major production hub anymore. You can make a film where you are. You can make one today. You can start with the tools available to you right now. Filmmaking, much like entrepreneurship, rewards initiative. It rewards accountability. It rewards execution over intention. It does not reward credentials alone. That's how this industry actually operates. And when you show up, do what you say you can do, and build relationships, that's half the battle right there, and you're on your way. If you found this helpful and you want more conversations like this, the practical side of how this industry actually functions, take a second to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future breakdowns. Here at this channel, we focus on the decisions, the trade-offs, and the structural realities that determine whether a film gets made and whether it succeeds. And if you're serious about building a real career, don't wait for permission. Get close to the work. That's where the real progress is made. And then just go do it. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.